From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Again, still on the road this week. That's just, I can't wait to get back in the studio to have my double espresso, to be able to coffee cup cheers, y'all. Obviously, if you're looking behind me, I'm pre-recording this episode. Still dark outside where I'm at. That's just kind of the cost of what I do when I'm on the road. But we've got a packed show for all y'all. So first of all, I want to apologize yesterday. Some of you brought this to my attention. I had led, like, if you read the headline, I was talking about the Cargill lawsuit getting dismissed. And then I kind of skipped that story altogether. And as a human, I own up to my mistakes. I am not perfect, although some of you may say so. So I apologize. We'll be talking about that story today, along a whole bunch of other stories. So let's get right to it. Coffee cup cheers. Make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, comment below. Let's start off with Apple fixing two critical zero-day vulnerabilities that were being exploited in attacks on Mac systems with an Intel-based processor. Apple is aware of the report and that this issue may have been exploited, according to an advisory issued yesterday. The two bugs were found in the macOS Sequoia JavaScript core. Those are CVEs 2024 44308 and 44309. They were both components of the Mac OS. The JavaScript would allow attackers to achieve remote code execution through maliciously crafted web content. The other flaw would allow for cross-site scripting. The company said it addressed the security flaws in Sequoia 15.1.1, so you want to make sure you get that updated. As the same components are found in other Apple operating systems, they also fixed iOS 17.7.2 and iPadOS 17.7.2, as well as iOS 18.1.1 and iPadOS 18.1.1 and Vision OS 2.1.1. While Apple says both flaws were discovered by Clement Lesagine and Benoit Sevens of Google's threat analysis group, the company has not provided any further details on what those exploits have been. This number is significantly better, by the way, than last year when Apple fixed, I believe, approximately 20 total zero days that were being exploited in the wild. This year, that number is much, much lower. A new China-linked cyber espionage group is being attributed to a series of targeted cyber attacks targeting telecom entities in South Asia and Africa. And the reason we talk about this today, and the folks over at CrowdStrike are bringing it out, is because we know the telecom breach in the U.S. has wide and deep implications to national security, to the overall security of our telecom networks. However, now we're seeing the same thing happen somewhere else, and that just kind of shows you the way China's operating in their APTs, the coordination, the sharing of successful attacks in order to continue to do what they do internationally. So CrowdStrike says they're tracking this adversary under the name Liminal Panda. They're describing it as possessing deep knowledge about telecommunication networks, the protocols that undergird telecom, and the various interconnections between providers. The threat actor malware portfolio included bespoke tools that facilitate clandestine access, command and control, and data exfiltration. The adversary conducts elements of their intrusion activity, according to CrowdStrike, using protocols that support mobile communication, such as emulation global system for mobile communications, that's GSM protocols, to enable C2, and developing tooling to retrieve mobile subscriber information, call metadata, and text messages. It's worth noting that some aspects of the intrusion were documented by the company back in October of 2021, attributing it then to a different threat cluster dubbed Light Basin. That was UNC 1945. You remember that on the show. We talked about it significantly back in 2021. CrowdStrike, for their end, say some of the custom tools in their arsenal are Sigtran translators, CoordScan, and Ping Pong, which come with the following capabilities. The Sigtran translator is a Linux ELF binary designed to send and receive data using Sigtran protocols. CoordScan is a network scanning and packet capture utility containing built-in logic to fingerprint and retrieve data relating the common telecommunication protocols from infrastructure such as serving the GPRS support node, and Ping Pong, a backdoor that listens for incoming magic ICMP echo requests and sets up a TCP reverse shell connection to an IP address and port specified within the packet. Liminal Panda attacks have been observed infiltrating external DNS servers. They use password spraying, extremely weak and third-party focused passwords, while the crew will use Tiny Shell in conjunction with publicly available SGSN emulators called SGSN Emo for C2 communication. All in all, CrowdStrike says that this disclosure really does match kind of the Salt, Typhoon, TTPs, and IOCs from some of the stuff they've seen. And again, that just shows you the policies around the Chinese Communist Party and what they're doing, which led yesterday to cybersecurity experts calling on key federal departments to do more to proactively escalate the threats coming from and emulating from China, including enhanced public-private collaboration and increased investments in threat intelligence, critical infrastructure resilience, and advanced defensive technologies. Threat actors linked to Beijing are intensifying sophisticated espionage campaigns and hacking operations targeting U.S. critical infrastructure and top officials. Several cybersecurity experts testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday, but agencies should be doing more to meet the moment and defeat growing cyber threats, according to Adam Myers, the senior VP of counter-adversary operations for CrowdStrike. That could include increasing collaboration with industry on threat hunting practices and particularly on performing threat actor infrastructure takedown. Efforts along these lines do take place periodically, but regrettably, the threat environment has worsened more rapidly than their ability to execute. The hearing comes after FBI and CISA said earlier this month that an ongoing federal investigation into the Telecom hack continues to remain under wraps. By the way, we still don't know the full story there and all the victims. However, we know that they did able to get into court-authorized wiretap systems. They were able to get into phone records and SMSs of political folks, people that work in the national security realm or other realms as well within the federal government. So a lot said there around that. Now we'll get to the story we missed yesterday. A former Cargill employee had his lawsuit dismissed at the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, upholding a lower court's dismissal for wage and hour claims against the company. This comes after the district court consolidated several claims against Cargill into one case, Ellis versus Cargill Meat Solutions. The plaintiff alleges that he was racially motivated drug testing, harassment, retaliation, as well as the 2021 ransomware attack against UKG's Kronos service caused delays and inaccuracy in his paycheck in violation of fair labor standards. The lower court dismissed all claims. The Fifth Circuit Court upheld it, finding that the plaintiff failed to state a claim under Title VII and that his FLSA claims lacked subject matter jurisdiction because Cargill offered an unconditional tender of maximum compensation in addition to his calculated overtime wages, which he was paid after reconciliation. So this is going, and the reason this lawsuit is kind of coming in is because, one, when the cyber attack happened, right, this was an issue with payroll. Again, you can go back to the episode in 2021 and actually look this up. So they agreed to pay a $6 million essentially claim to settle brought by individuals impacted by the hack, simply saying that the Kronos private cloud and payroll platform, because it was offline, some people weren't either fully paid or didn't get paid or whatnot, and so they made them all whole. That kind of came with a lawsuit and so forth. And then Cargill similarly agreed to a $2.4 million settlement to current and former employees who claimed they were not paid for all hours worked as a result of the outage. That suit that was filed in Minnesota federal court is separate from this one. In this decision, the Fifth Circuit Court held that the plaintiff's Title VII claims were conclusionary at best, stating that the claims of any sort of discrimination, and I'm not going to get into that, but what they did say is they made you whole for the breach, so therefore you don't have any more claims to go about there as well. So this lawsuit was complex, but it did include the data breach in it, which is why I was paying attention and actually following this case as it kind of went along, and it was kept getting dismissed. Obviously, this employee had a whole lot more allegations, but this wasn't just one employee. They kind of consolidated a whole bunch of cases where a whole bunch of people said that they were not completely paid for all of their hours, and their pay was missed due to the outage in the payroll system. And that kind of just shows you some of the kind of lingering effects that go on within a data breach and that type of outage. Ford said they completed the investigation after Intel broker and energy weapon user claimed on breach forums that they had hacked the company. Ford, for their sense, are saying yesterday that there was no breach of their systems or customer data. They say the matter involved a third-party supplier and a small batch of publicly available dealer business addresses. None of it is proprietary, and they're saying Intel broker exaggerated. So there's that there. Quick solution, 24 hours later, done. JamesCesar.substack.com is where you can find a summary of this episode with action items to take to your team. You can subscribe there for absolutely free. Get this in your inbox with the audio podcast every single day. Also on Saturdays, I put out our articles. This week, I wrote about tackling identity security, avoiding the hype, challenges, and best practices, kind of looking at how do we master identity security from a human and non-human in our digital world, and the guide you need for that. Go check that out. Absolutely free, available on our Substack. Go subscribe now. Oracle this week announced patches for a high-severity information disclosure vulnerability in their agile product lifecycle management that has been exploited in the wild. That's CVE 2024-21287. It's got a CVSS score of 7.5. It affects the version 9.3.6 and could be exploited remotely without authentication, meaning it's a low-complexity attack. Oracle credited Joel Snappy and Lutz Wolf of CrowdStrike for reporting the flaw, while Eric Maurice, Oracle VP of Security Assurance, revealed the security defect was caught being actively exploited in the wild. And if it's exploited, an unauthenticated perpetrator could download from the targeted system's file accessibles under the privilege used by the PLM application. So if it's got admin privilege, you can just imagine the data they can get their hands on there. So you just want to make sure to apply the updates as soon as humanly possible. We'll move to ransomware operation. This one, called Helldown, is believed to be targeting vulnerabilities in the Zixel firewalls to breach corporate networks that allows them to steal data and encrypt devices. Cybersecurity firm Sequoia is reporting this with medium confidence based on recent observations of Helldown attacks. Although not among the major players in the ransomware space, they've grown, obviously, since they first started. Helldown was first documented back in August of this year, and then again in October. The first report of a Linux variant targeting VMware files came from 360 NetLabs' Alex Turing on Halloween, October 31st. The Linux variant featured code to list and kill VMs to encrypt images. However, its functions are only partially invoked, indicating it's still under development and not yet fully developed, but you can kind of get the idea of what it does. The threat group listed 31 victims on its breach extortion portal, primarily small and medium-sized firms based in the US and Europe. That number has now gone down to 28, potentially indicating either some have paid a ransom and been removed from that list altogether. One of the victims listed is Zixel Europe, a networking and cybersecurity solution provider. The group's encryptors do not appear very advanced, and the threat actors are utilizing batch files to end tasks rather than incorporating this functionality directly into the malware, showing kind of like a lack of maturity compared to some of the, the log bits and the others of like the Black Cat, the lock bits, and so forth. So working its way from Europe, Sequoia found at least 8 victims listed on the Helldown website that used Zixel firewalls as an IPsec VPN access point at the time of their breach. So that's kind of giving you what they're doing and the timeline there. We'll put that in Substack as well. That's from Sequoia, so you can go and check it out there as well. CISA, for their end, are tagging 3 new flaws to its catalog, including a critical OS command injection impacting Progress Kemp Loadmaster. The flaw, which was discovered by the Rhino Security Labs and tracked to CVE 2024-1212, was addressed via an update released in February of this year. However, its first report of it being under active exploitation comes now. So this specific Kemp Loadmaster contains the OS command injection vulnerability that could allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to access the system through the Loadmaster management interface, enabling arbitrary system command execution. This CVE impacts Loadmaster versions 7.2.48.1 and before, and a whole bunch. And again, we'll have these in our Substack. You want to make sure you get that updated. The 2 other flaws that were added were the Palo Alto Network PAN-OS management interface and authentication bypass. Both of those Palo Alto CVEs 2024-0012 and CVE 2024-90474 have now been added to the actively exploited catalog by CISA, urging to patch those now. D-Link is warning customers to replace some of their end-of-life VPN router models after a critical unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability was discovered, and it will not be fixed. This impacts hardware and firmware revisions to the DSR 150 and 150N, as well as the 250 and the 250N, and that's from firmware 3.13 to 3.17 B901C. These VPN routers are popular in home offices and small business settings. They were sold internationally, and they reached their end of service date on May 1st. Now, this vulnerability will not be patched, so you want to make sure if you have those devices anywhere, and if you're in an MSP or anything like that, you want to make sure you address that and rip those out as well. And finally, NSO. We continue to monitor the NSO case. The WhatsApp NSO case has been very, very, very interesting. The stuff that's coming out kind of through the depositions and everything else is, NSO's kind of said like they played a small role, that predominantly their the country and the government that bought the Pegasus were the ones using it. However, now WhatsApp is saying in a filing to the Northern California federal judge that the unredacted court filings could be published last week, and that NSO that had long claimed that the spyware it sells is operated by government clients and not by the company itself. That's not been the case. Apparently, the way that works is that the host country will just put in the phone number of whoever they're trying to get access to their device, and then that's it. And then NSO essentially on the back end will group all of the data and give it to the customer as they see. Apparently, that's coming out from some of the testimonies, not fully there, but I'm going through the transcripts that have been made available now, the unredacted ones, to kind of identify exactly what was said there. NSO admitted that the actual process for installing Pegasus through WhatsApp was a matter of NSO and the system to take care of, not a matter of the customers to operate. The filing quoting Yaron Shohad, who was the company's chief operating officer at the time of the WhatsApp hack. The filing also says that Ramona Shkar, NSO's vice president of client executives, whom WhatsApp says was responsible for setting up infrastructure and accounts for clients at the time of the hack, testified that the company secured the WhatsApp accounts used by Pegasus for customer installation, set up and controlled the server infrastructure used to implement Pegasus, and delivered the exfiltrated data to the customer. So they almost ran Pegasus like essentially a SaaS model, right? So put in what you want, we'll operate it on our infrastructure. You don't have to have it, and so forth. They're making it really simple to do business. That's what that is. So, but now we know that NSO is not exactly innocent in that as well. So that they were actually doing some of the back end work there, and it wasn't just a nation state. So more on that as it becomes available. We'll look at those transcripts. I may end up writing my Saturday article on this. So there's that. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, with a whole lot more. Until then, have a great rest of your day, y'all. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.